6 years ago, I cut ties with my sister, Mindy, after I caught her repeatedly flirting with my then boyfriend, now husband, Richard, who was clearly uncomfortable. What made it even worse? My parents never seemed to care at all. They acted like it was perfectly normal for my sister to cozy up to the man I was dating, and thought it was just a phase for her. For context, Mindy is my younger sister. In the early years, I don't think Mindy resented me quite as much as she would later on. I remember there was a time when I adored her when the thought of being estranged from her would have seemed impossible. We would always play together and I was the one who taught her to ride a bike. But when we started growing up, it became more and more apparent how different our personalities were. Academically, I tended to do well in school without much struggle, whereas Mindy had a harder time. She wasn't unintelligent by any means, but for whatever reason, school didn't come as easily to her. This started to become a point of contention at home since our parents stressed a lot on our grades. Seeing that Mindy wasn't performing well, our parents would always make comparisons. They'd use me as an example for her to follow, constantly telling her to try harder, to do better, as if I were the benchmark for what she should be. I could tell how much it frustrated her, and honestly, I can't blame her for being upset. It must have been hard to constantly hear how she wasn't measuring up to her older sister. I would try to talk to her about it and even help her with her homework, but with constant criticism, she started to withdraw from me. Then, as teenagers, there was the matter of how we spent our time after school. Now I'm more of an introvert, so my evenings were usually quiet, filled with studying or reading a book in my room. I found comfort in my own company, which is just how I've always been. Mindy, on the other hand, was always much more social. She loved going out and hanging with her friends, and she thrived in that environment. She wasn't a bad kid for wanting to go to parties or school events like prom, it was just who she was. But because I preferred to stay home, our parents would use me as an excuse to keep her home as well. They'd say things like, "Your sister's at home studying, why can't you do the same?" Or if she doesn't go to parties, why should you? It was completely unfair to her, and I knew it. I didn't have any issue with her wanting to go out and have fun, but our parents would make it seem like I was the standard she should follow. This only ended up making her angrier. She slowly started to take that frustration out on me, calling me boring and a nerd because I didn't have the same social life she craved. I could see how much she resented the restrictions our parents placed on her, but it hurt that she would direct her anger at me. I tried explaining to her that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't the one keeping her at home, but she knew she couldn't blame our parents, so she would direct her anger on me instead. As time went on, the tension between Mindy and me escalated. What started as small disagreements grew into more frequent and intense fights. Mindy began attacking me by commenting about my appearance. She'd make snide comments about my hair, my weight, or anything else she could think of. One of her favorite jabs was to compare both of our looks. She'd laugh and point out how I supposedly took after our dad, and that made me uglier than her. She'd say things like, "Well, you got dad's nose and shoulders, so no wonder you look so masculine for a woman." It was a hurtful comparison since I had never even thought about my own body like that until then. No matter how many times I told her to knock it off, she would just find something else to pick on. One day, I made a casual comment to my mom in front of Mindy about how my old jeans didn't fit anymore. It wasn't a big deal, just an observation about how my body had changed over time. My mom, being understanding, reassured me that it was perfectly normal for our bodies to change as women and that I had nothing to worry about. But Mindy saw it as an opportunity to take a shot at me. With a smirk on her face, she snickered and said, "Well, you're starting to look like a pig. Maybe this is a sign for you to get off your fat ass and start working out more." That comment hit me hard. I remember feeling like I had been punched in the gut. My mother immediately stepped in and berated her for being so nasty, but even though my mom was on my side, Mindy's words stuck with me. It wasn't that I had been overweight or unhealthy before, but hearing something like that from my own younger sister got under my skin in a way that was hard to explain. Eventually, I decided that enough was enough. I made up my mind to start working out, not to prove anything to her but for myself. I wanted to feel stronger and healthier, and I thought that maybe exercise would help clear my head also. So, I started doing light dumbbell workouts at home and began running every morning. As I got more into it day by day, I realized how much I enjoyed it. I wasn't just working out because of what Mindy said anymore. I loved the feeling of accomplishment that came with getting stronger and improving my stamina. It became something I looked forward to, a positive outlet for all the negative emotions I had been carrying. Looking back, I'm glad I made that decision, as one morning, during one of my regular runs, I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband. Right from the start, Richard and I bonded over our shared love for staying active, and what started as casual conversations during our runs turned into something much deeper. I liked running with him every day and I felt much safer. Meeting him was one of the best things that happened to me, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made the decision to start taking better care of myself. When Richard and I started going out and things began to get more serious between us, my parents were thrilled to see me so happy and genuinely liked him. They could tell that he was a good guy and that I was really falling for him. I will admit that before meeting Richard I had only ever dated one guy, so I didn't have a lot of experience. However, my relationship with Richard felt really easy and natural. But of course, as always, Mindy found a way to put a damper on things. She would watch me come home all excited and happy after spending time with Richard, and instead of being supportive, she would say things like, "You shouldn't get so happy, he's probably just using you," or, "You don't have as much dating experience as I do, so don't get ahead of yourself. You are getting too serious and needy." It was as if she couldn't stand seeing me happy, especially with someone like Richard. I could tell she wanted me to feel insecure about my relationship, as if I couldn't possibly deserve someone like him. But the thing is, Richard was nothing like what she implied. From the very beginning, he was genuinely head over heels for me. He always kept his word, treated me with respect, and made it clear that he saw a future with me. I felt safe and loved with him, and I never once doubted his intentions. So I would pay no heed to Mindy's words. After months of dating, Richard came to my parents' house to officially meet the whole family. It was a big step, and I was a little nervous but mostly excited. My parents were very welcoming, as I expected, and they seemed to take an immediate liking to him. They saw how much he cared about me, and that was all they needed to give him their approval. It was a great evening overall except for Mindy. I had expected her to maybe make a few snide remarks about me in front of him like she usually did, but instead, she was strangely very flirty with Richard. She was making comments about how good he looked or laughing a little too much at his jokes. At one point, she even touched his arm during their conversation, which made Richard incredibly uncomfortable. He pushed his chair a bit away from her as well. I looked at my parents to see if they had noticed Mindy's behavior, but they seemed oblivious. To be honest, I had always known that Mindy behaved a certain way around boys. She had this habit of batting her eyelashes, using a softer, more girly voice, and generally putting on an act to get their attention. It wasn't exactly surprising to me when she did it with guys in the past, but this time it was different. This was Richard, my boyfriend, and I didn't expect her to cross that line. I couldn't shake the uneasiness I felt about how she had acted that evening, so after Richard left, I decided to bring it up to my parents. I explained how Mindy had been behaving strangely around Richard throughout the evening, but to my surprise, they completely brushed it off. My mom even teased me, almost laughing at the situation, and said something like, "Oh, come on, it's cute that your little sister has a small, harmless crush on Richard. That probably just means she trusts him too." I was taken aback by their reaction, especially my mom's. It was like she didn't see anything wrong with Mindy's behavior. To her, it was nothing, but to me, it was way more than that. It was a violation of boundaries, and it made me uncomfortable watching my little sister try to flirt shamelessly with my boyfriend. Since my parents weren't going to address it, I decided to confront Mindy myself. However, when I brought it up to her about why she was touching my boyfriend's arms, she acted all innocent and naive, as if she hadn't realized what she was doing. She told me she didn't mean anything by it, that she just found Richard really cute. She told me that he looked too good for me. I shook my head and told her that her actions weren't just uncomfortable for me, they were creepy, and even Richard had noticed how weird she was around him. I told her that she had no right to behave like a creep around him. Hearing this, her face turned bright red, and I could tell my words had struck a nerve. Instead of apologizing or trying to explain herself further, she looked furious and stormed off into her room, slamming the door behind her. It was clear that I had embarrassed her, but I didn't regret confronting her. I wasn't just going to let her undermine my relationship with Richard or make me feel insecure. After this incident, I grew careful around my sister and stopped bringing Richard back home. He also confessed that he was not very comfortable around Mindy. Later, when it was time for us to go to college, he and I had been accepted into colleges that were almost an hour away from each other. It was a bit sad to be long distance, however, he assured me that we would make it work and I believed in him. Mindy did remark to me before I left for my college that I should not have any expectations from Richard anymore and that men loved to cheat once they were in college. Luckily, despite her comments, Richard and I made our long-distance relationship work. We talked every day, made plans to see each other whenever we could, and stayed close even though we were miles apart. One day, Richard mentioned to me on one of our calls that Mindy had sent him a friend request on Facebook. He accepted the request without thinking much about it since she was my sister, so it wasn't completely out of the blue. But, immediately afterward, Mindy started to message him. Richard told me about it right away because it felt off to him, especially considering the fact that Mindy hadn't really been in touch with me since I left for college. She had not even once called me or texted me. If my mom ever tried to make her talk to me, Mindy would start yelling at her that she didn't want to talk. Now, all of a sudden, she was texting my boyfriend? It didn't make sense. A few days after our conversation, Richard came to visit me at college like he usually did, and this is when he showed me all the messages she'd been sending him. I scrolled through them and saw that there wasn't a single reply from him, yet she kept texting him every day. She'd send messages like "Good morning handsome" or "Good night, thinking of you," with a heart emoji even though there was no reply from him. On top of that, I noticed she had started commenting on some of his posts, sometimes calling him hot or dropping a rose emoji. It was getting way too much, and both Richard and I agreed that something needed to be done. So, with Richard by my side, I decided to call Mindy and confront her directly. Without beating around the bush, I asked her why she had been texting Richard behind my back. At first, she tried to brush it off, saying she just wanted to check in with him and see how he was doing. But that excuse didn't fly with me. I told her straight up that she had no right to be texting my boyfriend like that, and if she really wanted to check on him, she could have done it through me. There was no reason for her to go behind my back and act like this. I told her that she was acting like a creep by sending him multiple messages even though he had clearly been ignoring her. I made it clear that Richard was going to unfriend her from his account and that if she ever bothered him again, I wouldn't hesitate to send all the messages and comments to our parents and cousins. I wanted her to understand just how out of line she was being, and if she wanted to keep acting like a weirdo by texting her older sister's boyfriend, then she could explain herself to the whole family. At that point, she started to defend her actions, giving me excuses that it wasn't a big deal and Richard probably didn't mind receiving her messages, and that he must be lying to me by saying he was uncomfortable. I reminded her again this was her last warning. I didn't want to blow things up more than they already had been, so I told her that if she respected me at all, she'd stop immediately. Thankfully, Richard stood by me through it all, and after that conversation, he unfriended her immediately and seemed almost relieved to be done with her since this was very weird to him too. It felt like a necessary step in keeping her toxic behavior from creeping into our relationship. As you can probably imagine, after the whole ordeal with Richard, the already strained relationship between Mindy and me deteriorated even further. Although she never tried to reach out to Richard again after that confrontation, it became clear that she was harboring resentment toward me. Every time I came home during college breaks, she would refuse to acknowledge my presence. It was as if I didn't exist to her anymore, and any semblance of a sisterly relationship between us completely vanished. My parents noticed the shift, but they didn't really intervene. My mom, in her usual way of downplaying things even after finding out about everything, would brush it off by telling me that fights between sisters are normal and that Mindy would eventually grow up and move past her harmless crush on Richard. She seemed convinced that this was just a phase and that eventually Mindy and I would reconcile. But we never did. Time passed, and I graduated from college. Richard and I were still going strong, and after years of making the long-distance relationship work, we finally moved in together. Life felt like it was falling into place. We had our separate careers, but we supported each other through all the ups and downs. Then, one day, Richard completely surprised me by proposing. It was one of the most emotional moments of my life. I couldn't believe that we had made it through so much together and now we were taking this next step. Our parents were over the moon, and we started planning the wedding with excitement. My mom, still holding on to the hope that we could mend our relationship, insisted that I include Mindy in the wedding. She talked me into asking her to be a bridesmaid, even though I had serious reservations about it. But when I asked Mindy to be a bridesmaid, she flat out refused. She didn't offer any explanation to me. On top of this, she refused to come to my wedding also. Our parents tried to intervene, but Mindy was adamant about her decision. To be honest, I was a bit relieved about her not attending the wedding as I didn't have to worry anymore about any unnecessary drama. So, I let it go. It had been 6 years and I had no contact with Mindy. Life moved on and she rarely even crossed my mind. That was, until about 7 months ago, when my husband Richard casually mentioned one evening how he had just found out that his cousin, Harry, had posted a photo on social media with his new girlfriend, and to his shock, that girl was none other than my sister, Mindy. He showed me the picture and I couldn't believe my eyes. The idea that Mindy would be dating someone from Richard's family caught me completely off guard. I hadn't even known they were in the same circles, let alone that they had met and were now dating. My immediate reaction was to wonder if this was some sort of intentional move on Mindy's part. After everything that had happened between us, and especially her strange fixation on Richard in the past, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this. Feeling like I needed some clarity, I decided to reach out to Harry directly. We'd always had a good relationship, so I felt comfortable enough to ask him what was going on. When I brought up Mindy, Harry told me they had apparently met at a gym months ago and had hit it off right away. He seemed genuinely smitten with her. I tried to keep the conversation light, but I had to ask the obvious question. Did he know that Mindy was my sister? He admitted that he did after a few dates, although Mindy had exclusively asked him not to mention her to me at all, which is why he never reached out to me or Richard. That was a huge red flag for me. Why would she deliberately want to keep her relationship with Harry a secret from me? At that point, I felt like I had no choice but to tell Harry the truth about my estranged relationship with Mindy. I laid it all out: the years of resentment, the way she had crossed boundaries with Richard, and why I had ultimately cut off all contact with her. I told him about the weird obsession she seemed to have had with Richard back then, and how uncomfortable it had made both of us. I didn't hold back because I felt Harry deserved to know exactly why this situation was so bizarre for me. I was hoping he would at least understand my concerns or be willing to listen with an open mind. But instead, Harry got defensive. He seemed genuinely angry that I would bring all of this up. He argued that Mindy had been nothing but really nice to him and that I was probably making things up or exaggerating events from the past. He refused to believe my words and I was left frustrated and hurt. Later, when my husband found out about my conversation with Harry, he was also upset. He furiously told me that I should not have interfered in their relationship since this was none of our business. I tried to explain that my intentions had been to protect Harry and ensure he was aware of Mindy's history and potential issues. I genuinely wanted him to be safe and to avoid getting hurt. But Richard firmly told me that I should learn to accept their true love since Harry seemed genuinely happy with her. He also told me that maybe Mindy had changed after all these years and we should give her some benefit of the doubt. Despite my reservations about Mindy, for the sake of Richard, I agreed to step back. In these past few months after the social media reveal, Harry and Mindy have been dating more openly. Our parents, though initially uncomfortable with the whole situation, have chosen to believe Harry's claim that it was all just a coincidence that he met Mindy like that in his gym. Richard and I, however, have kept our distance from them, and rarely go to family gatherings anymore. This past weekend, Harry invited us to his housewarming party and insisted on us attending it. Apparently he had decided to move in with Mindy. Richard and I were hesitant at first about attending. But we didn't want to cause a rift in the family by declining, so we reluctantly decided to go. When we arrived at the party, things felt off right away. Harry, clearly smitten, was practically bouncing around, telling everyone how he and Mindy were meant for each other. He seemed so giddy, so head over heels, but Mindy was nonchalant, and almost indifferent, to him. I did catch her staring at Richard once or twice, but she never once came over to talk to us. As the evening progressed, I could see that Mindy was drinking more and more compared to the rest of the guests. At one point, Richard excused himself to go to the washroom, and that's when Mindy found her chance to be alone with him. Apparently, she followed him there and tried to initiate a conversation. According to Richard, she seemed intent on talking to him privately, but he told her firmly that whatever she had to say, she could say in front of me. This is when Mindy, already quite drunk, started loudly confessing her feelings to Richard right there in the hallway, her voice slurring with alcohol. She told him that she had always been in love with him, that she had done everything in her power to be near him. Her voice grew louder and more frantic as she accused him of choosing me when, according to her, she was the better-looking one. Her loud outburst could be heard by some of the guests. I got up from my seat, but before I could even react, Harry rushed over to check on her. Unfortunately, he also heard Mindy's confession to Richard loud and clear. I could see the shock and hurt on his face as the truth dawned on him. The room felt heavy with tension, and I could see people whispering, unsure of how to react to the drama that was unfolding right in front of them. Richard, as always, handled it with grace. He simply told Mindy that it was inappropriate of her to say these things to him and that her feelings, whatever they were, didn't matter because he had always been in love with me. That only seemed to enrage her further, and she started to sob shamelessly. Harry then tried to escort Mindy away from everyone to stop her from embarrassing herself further. Eventually, Richard and I decided it was best to leave the party. The tension was too thick, and it was clear that nothing good would come from staying any longer. We later learned that, after we left, Harry and Mindy had a massive fight right in front of everyone. It was reportedly a scene of utter chaos. Mindy, in a fit of rage in her drunken state, threw plates and glasses at Harry while he tried to dodge her attacks and kept demanding to know why she was in love with Richard. I am sure it must have been a horrifying experience for everyone present. Harry's parents soon reached out to me after the incident. They were upset and wanted to discuss what had happened. I reiterated everything I had previously told Harry. Mindy always had a strange obsession with my husband, even though Richard had never shown any interest in her and probably had even befriended Harry with that intention. I told them that they needed to talk to Harry and make him see the truth. Today, I received a call again from Harry's parents. It turns out that Harry, after talking things out with his parents, tried to break up with Mindy, but as expected, she didn't take his decision kindly. In her anger, Mindy started trashing his apartment, threw things around, scratched Harry's car, and even tossed glitter all over the place as a form of revenge. She had then packed up and left, leaving behind a mess that Harry now had to deal with since only his name was on the lease. Harry's parents were understandably livid and demanded that I get in touch with my sister immediately since she wasn't picking up any of their calls. They also demanded that I make Mindy pay for all the damages. I reiterated that I would try but that I doubted that she would even pick up my calls. Hearing this, his parents started threatening legal action, stating that if I didn't ensure she covered the costs, then they would sue me and her. I was taken aback by their reaction. I tried to explain to them that I had no control over Mindy's actions and that I had warned them and Harry already about her behavior. Harry's mom countered that I should have done a better job warning them, and because she is my sister, I should be held liable for the damages also. Ida, for not warning Harry and his parents enough? Should I have done something more? Update 1. Wow, I can't believe my post has blown up so quickly. I spoke with Richard about this when he came back from work, and he assured me that he would talk to his family and sort everything out. He asked me not to worry about anything since I was not legally responsible for my sister's actions anyway. Also, Richard has apologized to me for not believing me when I tried to warn him earlier about the red flags regarding my sister dating his cousin. For those who keep asking, no, my husband has never had a relationship or affair with my sister. He has never even been alone with her. If anything had happened between them, my sister wouldn't have kept it a secret until now, she would have definitely made it known long ago. As for Mindy, I am not sure if she is really in love with my husband or not. Her obsession with my husband probably also stems from deep-seated insecurities and sibling rivalry over the years. I do think her inappropriate behavior towards him is more about competing with me and undermining my happiness. It's weird how my own sister has become my worst enemy. Update 2. So, my parents have agreed to pay for all the damages caused by Mindy. It turns out that my sister went to them in tears after her breakup and has been living with them for the past few days. When I told my parents about everything Mindy had done to Harry's place, they immediately contacted Harry and his parents to apologize. They are furious at Mindy and have agreed to cover any necessary repairs. Mindy is quite fortunate that Harry isn't pressing charges against her. Harry's parents did call me to apologize for their earlier harshness. They admitted they weren't thinking clearly at the time and that they didn't really mean it. I have chosen to gracefully accept their apology as I understand how they must have felt after what my sister did. Update 3. Okay, so it's been a month since my last update. For everyone asking about what happened to Mindy and whether she faced any consequences for her actions, my dad has firmly decided that she has 1 month to find her own place and move out of their place. My sister has never had a stable job and has always lived with my parents or her past boyfriends for financial support, so this is going to be interesting. My mother has also stopped excusing Mindy's behavior and seems to be done with her. Both my parents seem really disappointed after having paid thousands of dollars to Harry for the damages she caused. Anyway, Richard and I are doing fine. I feel very much relieved knowing that my sister will no longer be a part of Richard's family.